Hey guys, welcome back to Door Talk. We're excited today to have our special guest, Lori Greene, with us today. Lori, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And so, Lori, how did you get into the industry that you're in now?
Well, I graduated with a degree in architecture back in 1986, and I already knew I didn't want to be an architect. So I happened to get a job with a storefront, aluminum storefront company. I was a draftsman. And then I became a detailer working for a distributor and worked for another distributor and a manufacturer's rep. And then finally in 1994, I started working with the Allegiant brands. And it was a small rep agency. There were only 5 of us. So we all did everything from filing to replacing closers to training. And so we covered the New England states at that time. And, I did it all back then. So it was a good introduction to that part of the industry.
And it sounds like you're allowed to get like a lot of hands-on experience as well,
For
which
sure.
is always a plus.
A little bit
Yeah.
too much sometimes. When there was a problem, I was one of the ones who went out and tried to help fix it. So it was good.
And so, a lot of people refer to you as the code guru. You're the one to go to for all of our code questions. And so, how did that come about? What made you get interested in the codes?
Yeah, so somewhere around like the late 90s, my bosses thought that if we had expertise in codes, that we would be providing more value to our customers and, they would want us to write specifications if they were architects. And so they volunteered me to be the one to learn about codes. And so I started doing research and just learning more because, I went to hardware school. I was in AHC, CDC at that time, and we used to highlight the books, highlight the code books. And, but, I didn't, it was hard to turn the highlighting, the reading and highlighting into like real world, right? So I remember early on, I asked this distributor who had been around for a long time, where is panic hardware required? And he didn't know. Like he couldn't give me a real concise answer as to like where to find that information or where it was. So I said, okay, there's definitely a need for this expertise in the industry, and not just for me, but it turned into for everyone else as well. But as I started doing training for architects, mostly because that was my job, I was a spec writer and then the spec manager. So I would be doing this training and I would get halfway through, and definitely every time someone in the room would say, oh crap, I made a mistake. What you just said, I've been doing that wrong. I didn't put panic hardware somewhere that it was supposed to be, or something like that. So that was how, you know, I turned that expertise sort of into engagement and got them to think that, if they needed anything to do with hardware, that they should just call me, because otherwise, they were afraid of making a mistake or wasting time or something like that. So that's how it all began.
And so, out of that, though, kind of birthed uh, the IDG Hardware site. I guess is kind of where that kind of came from. So, some background on that, on how that site got started, and well, how did it start?
Yeah, so, it wasn't I kind of just go with the flow. So it wasn't just a plan that we set out from the beginning that this is what we were going to do. What happened was, with all of the training that I was doing and this reputation that I started to somehow get, I was getting all these code questions all the time. And I still had my day job. I was a spec writer and I was managing our team. And so, I would just all day be answering questions, actually, and then at night I would write the specs and all of that. So I had to think of something. So I got this idea that if I put the information out where people could find it on their own, they wouldn't have to call me, or they wouldn't have to call me so much. So in 2009, I went to my managers, and we were still a pretty small office. And I said, guys, I've got the answer. I am going to create a blog. And it's not going to be a blog about everything to do with doors. It's just going to be the code requirements for doors. And they were like, okay, yep, sounds like an interesting idea, but I don't know. They didn't want to make me mad, I think. So I just was trying to reach my architects in New England. That's who I worked with, and that's who I needed to connect with. But then I did a training for our local DHI chapter, and I mentioned the site. And then the next day, a rep for actually another company had sent something out to all of his fellow reps across the country, and they all started calling me like, hey, how do we get access? Can we share this? And back then it's kind of a, it was like I said, it wasn't sort of a plan that we started and just followed through. The site at that time was called IHateHardware.com because all of my architects hated hardware, and it was kind of a funny way, for them to be like, sometimes they still come up to me and they go, I hate hardware, like they're typing it in, and they'll say it right to me. And you can still get there with that, using that URL actually, but it's kind of like the secret backdoor to get in. But it was just kind of a funny thing. And then after a while, people kept asking me, if you hate hardware so much, why are you a hardware consultant or a spec writer? So I had to explain, and so finally I changed the name and to IDG Hardware, and now the rest is history.
And when I first got involved with the industry, and came in as a warehouse assistant, I came in with a lot of questions
Hmm.
because I wanted to know what we did and everything. And all the time I got, have you checked out Lori Greene's website? Have you checked it out? And I was like, I don't know who Lori Greene is, but I'll research it. And so I went in, I found iDig Hardware, and I found the Wordless Wednesdays and all that. I spent probably 3 hours that day going through the site and learning a ton. And I still use it to this day. I mean, it's a great site, and we appreciate you being able to put all that information out there and taking the time to do that because it's really great information.
Yeah, I love hearing from people who are newer to the industry. People write to me all the time and say, when I started, I didn't know anything, and my boss told me I should read what you write every day. And that was one of the ideas. Basically, was to make learning about codes and hardware a little bit less painful, I'll say. And so it's really cool when someone comes in and says, my first year in the industry, I really relied on you, to teach me things. So
Yeah.
I love that the most, actually. But the site has a lot of resources on it, a lot of good information, whether someone's new or has been in the industry a long time, and even for code officials, for GCs, people like kind of surprising people come to visit the site and then connect with me if they have questions. I had a code official a while back was like, "Hey, I've got this fireworks store that has a padlock on the front door. What can I tell them? Like, I know that's not okay. Like, what can I point to tell them that's not acceptable?" So, I get those requests all the time too. So it really has been a success, kind of a surprise. I've written a post just about every weekday since 2009. So there are about 3,000 posts on the site now,
Wow.
and it gets a couple thousand visits every weekday. So considering that's a pretty, narrow topic, I think that's great, if people can find what they need.
For sure. And then also you have a spot or on each blog that you do, you have a spot where people can comment,
Hmm.
ask questions, or just make a comment. And you seem to be pretty active on there, as I'm sure as active as you can be.
Yes, sometimes people sometimes forget this. I'll get messages like, "Your team is doing a great job." I'm like, "It's me, basically." So, I try to get to the comments and answer. I get lots of emails and stuff, so I try to get back to everybody as quickly as I can. But yes, the comments, that is one of my favorite things because it's really a community. The this community has been created around the site. So it's not just me saying things. Sometimes I ask a question, what would you do about this situation? What have you experienced? And it's amazing to me that people will share their experience, and maybe, maybe their competitor might see or whatever, but it doesn't matter. Like, we're all kind of working together and helping each other. And so I think that's fantastic. I think now there are about 22,000 comments on the
Wow.
posts on the site. So definitely has gotten some great interaction and just has been good. So,
Well, Lori, I mean, I'm telling you, when I, like I said, when I first got on the site and I went around and looked at everything, um, at first I was like, what did I just stumble upon? Because I was trying to understand. But the way you write things out, the way the blogs are written, it really helps people new to the industry be able to understand that, especially the breakdown that you give because of it. And like I said, we really appreciate that. And again, we thank you so much for taking time to be on Door Talk today and share a little bit about your background and how iDig Hardware came about.
yeah, well, thanks for having me. And I have some new stuff coming. I'm always trying to organize things in different ways so people can find what they need on the site. And so I have some new training coming. I
Awesome.
just updated a lot of the resources with the 2021 code information. So the code reference guide has been updated. That's a 40-page little booklet that you can download or get hard copies of. And I also updated my short codes classes, which there are about 50 of. And I'll be talking about those a little bit more on the site. So there's lots more to come.
And be looking out at doortalk.com as well. We're going to be sharing that stuff as much as we can from iDig Hardware. So, whether you see it on iDig Hardware or see it on Door Talk, check it out. But thank you again, Lori, for your time. And guys, be looking out. We're going to have a part two to talk about the 2021 code updates. So thank you again, Lori. And guys, we'll see you on the next episode.